Classified evidence log. Subject: Robert Ben Rhoades. Status: incarcerated. Known victims: multiple. Primary evidence: photographs, victim testimony, truck cab, interstate connections. Behavioral pattern: abduction, captivity, sexual sadism, control. Investigators note: highways are designed to connect places. For Robert Ben Rhoades, they made people disappear. I'm Detective Cipher with the Classified Mind, and today we're investigating the most disturbing case of all: the human mind itself. In April of 1990, an Arizona Highway Patrol officer approached a tractor trailer stopped along the highway. It should have been routine: a disabled truck, a driver needing assistance, maybe nothing at all. Instead, that officer discovered a woman inside the cab. She was alive, but what she told investigators would transform an ordinary traffic stop into something much larger. Because the truck wasn't simply transportation. It was a crime scene. And the man behind the wheel wasn't simply a truck driver. His name was Robert Ben Rhoades. Investigators would eventually discover photographs, missing person connections, and victims scattered across multiple states. But perhaps the most frightening question wasn't how Rhoades committed his crimes. It was how long America's highways had allowed him to remain invisible. Let's open the case file. Evidence marker number 1, the highway. By 1990, Robert Ben Rhoades was an experienced long-haul truck driver. His work carried him across thousands of miles of American highway. To everyone else, those highways connected cities. To someone hunting strangers, they offered something else: anonymity. A person could be encountered in one state. A crime could occur somewhere else, and evidence could appear hundreds of miles away. Different police departments, different jurisdictions, different missing person reports, no obvious connection. Rhoades blended into that environment almost perfectly. Truck stops became places where strangers constantly arrived and disappeared. And his tractor trailer gave him something most offenders never have: a private space that could move. Investigators wouldn't understand just how important that was until April 1st, 1990. An Arizona Highway Patrol officer approached Rhoades' tractor trailer near Casa Grande. Inside was a woman being held against her will. She had been restrained inside the sleeper compartment of the truck. Rhoades reportedly attempted to portray what was happening as consensual. The evidence told a different story. He was arrested. And when investigators began examining the truck, they realized they hadn't simply rescued one victim. They may have interrupted a pattern. Evidence marker number 2, the sleeper cab. The sleeper compartment of a long-haul truck is supposed to be exactly what the name suggests: a place for a driver to rest. Rhoades had turned his into something else. Investigators found restraints inside the cab. The space gave him privacy while allowing him to remain constantly mobile. For an offender obsessed with domination, it was an almost perfect environment, and the woman discovered in Arizona could tell investigators what happened when the doors closed. Rhoades controlled where she went, when she moved, whether she could leave. That distinction matters because Rhoades' crimes weren't simply about killing. The evidence pointed towards something more prolonged: captivity. For some violent offenders, the victim's fear and helplessness become part of the psychological reward itself. The objective isn't simply death, it's domination. And once investigators began looking beyond the woman they had rescued, they found photographs. One girl appeared repeatedly. She was young. Her appearance changed across the images. Her hair had been cut, her clothing changed, and the photographs appeared to document a period of captivity. Investigators didn't yet know who she was, but somewhere in America, a family did. Evidence marker number 3, Regina. Her name was Regina Kay Walters. She was 14 years old. In February of 1990, Regina and her boyfriend, Ricky Lee Jones, left Texas. At some point during their journey, they crossed paths with Robert Ben Rhoades. Both disappeared. Ricky's remains would later be discovered in Mississippi. Regina remained missing, until investigators examining Rhoades' photographs realized the unidentified girl appearing again and again might be connected to a body discovered hundreds of miles away. Regina's body had been found in Illinois. She had been strangled, but the photographs provided investigators with something unusually disturbing. They didn't simply document Regina's existence. They documented what Rhoades was doing to her. One of the final images shows Regina standing inside an abandoned structure. Her hair had been cut short. She was wearing a dress and heels. Her hands were raised. Rhoades was behind the camera. That photograph has become one of the most recognizable images associated with the case. But from an investigator perspective, the camera tells us something important. Rhoades didn't merely want control in the moment. He wanted to preserve it. The photographs allowed him to revisit the power he had exercised over another human being. And Regina wasn't the only victim investigators would eventually connect to the truck driver. Before we follow the evidence across state lines, don't let this investigation go cold. Subscribe to The Classified Mind, and if you're following the case, tell me in the comments what piece of evidence would have caught your attention first. Now, let's get back to the investigation. Evidence marker number 4. The road gets longer. Investigators began comparing Rhoades' travels with unresolved murders and missing person cases across the country. One case involved a young married couple, Patricia Walsh and Douglas Zyskowski. They disappeared while traveling in 1989. Douglas's remains were discovered in Texas. Patricia's remains were found in Utah. For years, investigators didn't know who had killed them. Eventually, Rhoades admitted responsibility for their murders. Think about what that means from an investigative standpoint. A couple disappears. One victim is found in Texas, the other in Utah. The offender keeps driving. Without a connection between those crime scenes, investigators in different states may have no reason to believe they're hunting the same person. That was the advantage Rhoades carried with him every time his truck entered another jurisdiction. And it exposes a much larger problem. Highway serial killers are extraordinarily difficult to track because the place where a victim disappears, the place where the crime occurs, and the place where the body is discovered can all be completely different. Rhoades didn't need a secluded house. He didn't need a basement. He brought the crime scene with him. Evidence marker number 5. The psychology of the truck stop killer. So what was Robert Ben Rhoades actually seeking? If murder had been his only objective, much of what investigators discovered makes little sense. He kept victims alive, restrained them, sexually assaulted, and tortured them. And in Regina Walters' case, changed her appearance and photographed her during captivity. Those behaviors point towards sexual sadism, a pattern in which another person's suffering, fear, or humiliation can become sexually arousing or psychologically rewarding. And that helps explain why control mattered so much. Rhoades wasn't simply controlling his victims, so they couldn't escape. Their helplessness appears to have been part of what he wanted. The longer the captivity continued, the more completely he controlled their world, their movement, their appearance, even whether they believed they would survive. The photographs are especially revealing. By documenting Regina during captivity, Rhoades wasn't just exercising control in the moment. He created a record of it, something he could potentially revisit after the encounter was over. That's what separates this behavior from violence committed simply for money, escape, or eliminating a witness. For Rhoades, death appears to have been the end of the process. The psychological reward came before it. Fear, humiliation, suffering, control. We may never know exactly why Rhoades developed those desires. Psychology rarely gives us one event that explains why someone becomes a sexual sadist or serial killer. But we can see why his truck became so important. It gave him privacy, isolation, mobility, and nearly complete control over whoever was trapped inside. The truck didn't create Robert Ben Rhoades. It gave him an environment perfectly suited to the predator he had already become. Robert Ben Rhoades was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. But investigators have long examined whether the victims we know about represent only part of the story. His profession carried him across the country during an era when police databases didn't communicate the way they do today. A missing person in Texas might have no obvious connection to a body discovered in Illinois, Utah, or beside an interstate hundreds of miles away. Rhoades didn't discover some perfect place to hide his crimes. He discovered movement. Every highway gave him another jurisdiction, and every mile placed more distance between a missing person and the investigator trying to find them. In the end, Rhoades wasn't caught because investigators predicted where he would strike. He was caught because one highway patrol officer stopped beside the right truck and found someone who was still alive. Until next time, keep your eyes on the evidence and your mind on the motive. Detective Cipher signing off.